Dust swirled around Emma Ratcliffe, 24, as she entered the Crimson Quarry firing range. Jedediah Jed Thornton, a man in his 50s, watched her approach, his weathered face unreadable. The .22 caliber rifle felt heavy in her hands, a cold reminder of the past she couldn't escape in Dust Whisper, Nevada. Could she really face this? The desert sun beat down on the corrugated iron roof of the Crimson Quarry, turning the interior into a stifling oven. Emma adjusted her grip on the .22, the cool metal a momentary comfort against her sweaty palms. Jedediah Thornton, or Jed as everyone called him, stood behind her, his presence a strange mix of judgment and something else she couldn't quite decipher. Pity, perhaps. He hadn't said much when she'd walked in, just gestured towards Lane 5 with a grunt. The targets downrange, faded and riddled with holes, seemed to mock her hesitation. Each one a stark reminder of the accident, the day her life fractured. 5 years. 5 years since the echo of a gunshot had stolen everything. "You gonna stand there all day, girl, or you gonna shoot?" Yet's voice, raspy from years of sun and dust, cut through her reverie. Emma flinched, her fingers tightening around the rifle. "Just getting a feel for it," she mumbled, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. Jed didn't respond, but she could feel his gaze boring into the back of her head. She raised the rifle, the weight feeling unfamiliar, almost foreign. She remembered a time when this weapon was an extension of her arm, a source of joy and pride. Now, it felt like a venomous serpent coiled in her hands, ready to strike. Taking a shaky breath, she lined up the sights on the nearest target, a crude silhouette of a coyote. Her vision swam, the image blurring with a rush of unwanted memories. Her father's calloused hands guiding hers, the smell of gunpowder and oil, the sound of laughter. Followed by the deafening silence, she squeezed the trigger. The shot was wild, the bullet kicking up dust several feet to the left of the target. Emma lowered the rifle, her face burning with shame. It was worse than she'd imagined. "First shot's always the hardest," Jed said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Now, try again. Focus. Breathe." Easier said than done. Emma raised the rifle again, her hands trembling uncontrollably. She fought to control her breathing, to block out the memories, to silence the whispers in her head. But the fear was a living thing, a cold hand gripping her heart. Another shot, another miss. This time, the bullet grazed the edge of the target, a pathetic near miss. Frustration welled up inside her, threatening to spill over. "I can't," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I can't do this." Jed stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. He didn't touch her, but his presence was a solid, unwavering force. "You can," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "You just gotta remember how. Forget everything else. Just focus on the target." He reached out and adjusted her stance slightly, his touch surprisingly light. "Relax your shoulders. Grip the rifle firm, but not too tight. Breathe and squeeze. Don't jerk the trigger." Emma followed his instructions, trying to empty her mind. She focused on the red dot of the sight, on the rough texture of the target, on the slow, steady rhythm of her breath. She squeezed the trigger. This time, the shot was closer. The bullet hit the coyote silhouette, a ragged hole appearing in its chest. Not a bullseye, but an improvement. A small victory in a war against herself. A flicker of something. Hope? Ignited within her. Just maybe she could do this. Maybe she could reclaim something that had been stolen from her. She fired again, and again. Each shot was a little better than the last, the holes in the target slowly clustering closer to the center. The fear didn't disappear entirely, but it began to recede, replaced by a growing sense of determination. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher in the sky. The air grew thick and heavy, the smell of gunpowder mingling with the dry scent of the desert. Emma lost track of time, her world shrinking to the rifle, the target, and the steady rhythm of her breathing. Jed watched her, his expression unchanging. He offered no praise, no encouragement, just a silent, watchful presence. But Emma felt his support, a quiet confidence that fueled her efforts. As the afternoon wore on, a small crowd began to gather at the firing range. Locals, drawn by the sound of gunfire, curious to see who was disturbing the peace. They leaned against the fence, their faces etched with a mixture of boredom and idle curiosity. Among them was Earl Buchanan, the owner of the local hardware store, and a man known for his sharp tongue and even sharper temper. He watched Emma with narrowed eyes, a sneer twisting his lips. He'd never liked the Ratcliffes, considered them outsiders, and he certainly didn't approve of a woman handling a gun. "Look at little Emma Ratcliffe, trying to be a sharpshooter," he drawled, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Thought she'd be too scared to even look at a gun after what happened." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Emma flinched, her concentration broken. The memories came flooding back, the faces of the people who had whispered and pointed, the weight of their judgment. Her shots went wild again, scattering across the target like buckshot. Shame washed over her, odder and more suffocating than the desert sun. She wanted to disappear, to run away and hide from their stares. But then she saw Jed. He was standing beside her, his weathered face set in a grim line. He didn't say anything, but his eyes held a message. Don't let them win. Emma took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. She ignored the whispers, the stares, the taunts. She raised the rifle again, her hand steady. She squeezed the trigger. This time, the bullet found its mark. A perfect bullseye, dead center. The crowd gasped. Earl Buchanan's sneer faltered. Emma fired again. Another bullseye, and another. She was in the zone, her movements fluid and effortless. The rifle felt like an extension of her body, the target a mere formality. The fear was gone, replaced by a sense of power and control. She fired until the magazine was empty, each shot hitting its mark with deadly accuracy. When she was finished, the target was riddled with holes, a testament to her skill and her determination. Silence descended over the firing range. Everyone was staring at her, their faces a mixture of awe and disbelief. Emma lowered the rifle, her chest heaving. She met Earl Buchanan's gaze, her eyes burning with defiance. "Anything else you want to say, Earl?" she asked, her voice clear and steady. Earl sputtered, his face turning red. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He just glared at her, his eyes filled with impotent rage. Then, he turned and stalked away, muttering under his breath. The crowd parted to let him pass, their eyes following him with a mixture of fear and amusement. Emma watched him go, a small smile playing on her lips. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. She had faced her demons, and she had won. For now, Jed clapped her on the shoulder, a rare gesture of approval. "Not bad, kid," he said, his voice gruff but sincere. "Not bad at all." He turned and walked back towards the shack, leaving Emma alone with her thoughts. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the firing range. The air was cooler now, the desert breeze carrying the scent of sagebrush and dust. Emma looked at the target, at the cluster of bullet holes that marked her progress. It was a testament to her resilience, to her ability to overcome adversity. But it was also a reminder of the pain she had endured, the scars she would carry forever. She knew that her journey was far from over. She still had a long way to go, both as a shooter and as a person. But she was no longer afraid. She had found something here, in this dusty, forgotten corner of the world, something that had been missing for a long time, a sense of purpose. As she walked back towards town, a question lingered in her mind. What would she do with it? The Crimson Quarry firing range held secrets, shadows, and the promise of something more. She knew instinctively that the town of Dust Whisper wasn't done with her yet. And she wasn't done with it. What was it about this forsaken place that kept her chained here? The walk back to Dust Whisper felt different. The setting sun painted the desert in hues of orange and purple, but Emma barely noticed. Her mind was still replaying the afternoon at the Crimson Quarry, the sting of Earl Buchanan's words, the unexpected surge of confidence with each bullseye. The .22 rifle, once a source of crippling fear, now felt like a tool, a key to unlocking something within herself. Dust Whisper, Nevada, wasn't much to look at. A scattering of weathered buildings huddled around a single main street, baking under the relentless sun. The Dust Devil Saloon, the gas station, Earl Buchanan's hardware store, and the barely there grocery store constituted the commercial heart of a town slowly fading from the map. Most of the houses were small, single-story affairs, their paint peeling and their yards filled with rusting car parts and other forgotten relics. Anna walked past the Dust Devil, the sounds of country music and raucous laughter spilling out into the street. She resisted the urge to go in. It had been her father's favorite haunt, a place filled with bittersweet memories. He'd loved to sing karaoke, his booming voice somehow both off-key and endearing. She turned down a side street, heading towards the small, dilapidated house she rented on the outskirts of town. The house belonged to Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman with a kind heart and 1,000 cats. Mrs. Henderson rarely bothered Emma, content to collect her rent and leave her alone. And Emma appreciated the solitude. As she reached her porch, she noticed a figure sitting on the steps. It was Deputy Miller, the town's only law enforcement officer. He was a young man, barely older than Emma herself, with a perpetually worried expression. "Evening, Emma," he said, standing up as she approached. "Deputy," she replied, her voice wary. She hadn't had much interaction with the law since the accident. "Just wanted to check in," he said, shuffling his feet. "Heard some shots fired out at the quarry this afternoon. Figured it was you." Emma's heart sank. "Is there a problem?" "No problem, exactly," he said, avoiding her gaze. "Just, folks are a little on edge after everything." He didn't need to elaborate. Everyone in Dust Whisper knew about Emma Ratcliffe, the girl who accidentally shot her father, the girl who hadn't touched a gun in 5 years, the girl who was now suddenly back at the shooting range. "I was just practicing," she said, her voice defensive. "I wasn't hurting anyone." "I know," Deputy Miller said quickly. "It's just, maybe keep it down a little, huh? Some folks are still sensitive." Emma clenched her fists. "Sensitive? My father was sensitive. He was also a good man, and his death was an accident." The words came out sharper than she intended. Deputy Miller winced. "I didn't mean anything by it, Emma. Just trying to keep the peace." "Well, you can tell those sensitive folks that I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice rising. "And I'm not going to hide." She pushed past him and unlocked the door, slamming it shut behind her. She leaned against the door, her chest heaving. The town, she realized, hadn't forgotten. And maybe a part of her had hoped they would. The inside of the house was small and sparsely furnished. A worn sofa, a rickety table, and a small television set constituted the living room. The kitchen was even smaller, with a single counter, a sink, and a refrigerator that hummed constantly. Emma went to the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of water, chugging it down. She needed to calm down, to think rationally. She couldn't let the town's prejudice dictate her life. She walked over to the window and looked out at the desert. The sky was a riot of colors, the stars beginning to appear. It was a beautiful, unforgiving landscape, and it was her home. She thought about her father, about the joy he had found in shooting, about the lessons he had taught her. He wouldn't want her to be afraid. He wouldn't want her to give up. She made a decision. She wouldn't let the town's fear control her. She would keep practicing. She would get better. She would prove them all wrong. The next morning, Emma woke up early and drove back out to the Crimson Quarry. The air was cool and crisp. the desert still shrouded in shadow. Jed was already there, sweeping the dust off the shooting lanes. He glanced up as she approached, his expression unreadable. "Back for more, huh?" "Yes," Emma said, her voice firm. "I am," Jed grunted and pointed towards lane 5. "Suit yourself." Emma set up her target and loaded her rifle. She took a deep breath and focused on the task at hand. Forget the town, forget the whispers, forget the past. Just the rifle, the target, and the present moment. She fired. The shot was good, but not perfect. She adjusted her stance, her grip, her breathing. She fired again. This time, the bullet hit closer to the bullseye. She spent the entire morning at the firing range, honing her skills. Jed watched her, offering occasional advice. He was a hard man, but he knew his stuff. As the sun climbed higher, a familiar figure appeared at the fence. It was Earl Buchanan, his face set in a scowl. "What do you want, Earl?" Emma asked, her voice tight. "Just came to see if you'd run out of bullets yet," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Not yet," Emma replied, her eyes narrowing. "Well, don't get too cocky," Earl said. "This ain't a game, girl. Guns are dangerous. And you of all people should know that." Emma ignored him and continued to shoot. She could feel his gaze on her, but she refused to acknowledge him. After a while, Earl grew bored and walked away. Emma breathed a sigh of relief. She hated dealing with him, but she knew she couldn't avoid him forever. He was a fixture and dust whisper, a symbol of the town's prejudice and small-mindedness. As the days turned into weeks, Emma's skills improved dramatically. She was shooting consistently well, her accuracy surpassing even Yet's expectations. She started entering local shooting competitions, much to the dismay of some of the town's more established shooters. She won a few, lost a few, but always held her head high. She was proving to herself and to the town that she was more than just a girl who accidentally shot her father. She was a shooter, a competitor, a survivor. But the town's resentment simmered beneath the surface. Whispers followed her everywhere she went, and she could feel the weight of their judgment. She knew that it was only a matter of time before something happened. One evening, as she was walking home from the Crimson Quarry, she noticed a group of men standing in the shadows near her house. They were all local boys, young and drunk, and they were looking at her with menacing eyes. "Well, look who it is," one of them said, stepping out of the shadows. Little Emma Ratcliffe, the sharpshooter. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She knew this was it. This was the moment she had been dreading. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Just want to have a little chat," the man said, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "About your little hobby." He took a step closer, and Emma knew she was in trouble. She didn't know what they wanted, but she knew it wasn't good. "Leave me alone," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "Oh, we can't do that," the man said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "We have a score to settle." The other men moved in closer, surrounding her. Emma looked around, desperately searching for an escape route, but there was nowhere to go. She was trapped. Just as the men were about to grab her, a voice boomed out of the darkness. "Leave her alone." The men turned around, startled. Standing in the shadows was Jedediah Thornton, his face grim, a shotgun held firmly in his hands. What would Jed do? Jedediah, Jed Thornton, a man in his 50s with a weathered face, stood like a granite sentinel. His presence shifted the air, the drunken bravado of the young men faltering under his intense gaze. Emma Ratcliffe, 24, leaned back against the splintering fence, a breath catching in her throat, unsure if Yet's intervention was a blessing or merely a postponement of the inevitable. "Get out of here, Jed." One of the men, a lanky kid named Billy, finally managed to stammer out. "This ain't your business." Yet's voice was low, gravelly, like desert stones grinding together. "Everything that happens in this town is my business. And right now, you're harassing a young woman. Go home." Billy puffed out his chest, trying to regain his lost courage. She's nothing but trouble. Always has been. That's enough, Billy, Jed said, his grip tightening on the shotgun. I'm not going to tell you again. The standoff stretched, taut and silent. The only sound was the rustling of the wind through the Joshua trees that ringed the edge of town. Finally, Billy's nerve broke. He spat on the ground. Fine, he muttered. But this ain't over, Ratcliffe. He and the other men shuffled away, disappearing back into the darkness. Emma watched them go, her body still trembling. Jed lowered the shotgun, his gaze softening slightly as he turned to her. You all right, Emma? Yeah, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Thanks, Jed. They're just a bunch of drunken fools, he said. Don't let them get to you. It's hard not to, she admitted. They all think I'm a curse on this town, Jed sighed. This town has a long memory, but it also has a good heart, buried deep down. You just have to give it a chance. He paused, looking at her intently. You're getting good, Emma. Real good. Don't let these fools scare you away from something you're good at. I won't, she said, her voice gaining strength. I promise, Jed nodded. Good. Now, get home safe. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the night as silently as he had arrived. Emma watched him go, a wave of gratitude washing over her. She didn't understand Jed Thornton, but she knew he was a good man. And in a town like Dust Whisper, good men were hard to come by. The next day at the Crimson Quarry, Jed was unusually talkative. He peppered Emma with questions about her technique, her rifle, her goals. He seemed genuinely interested in her progress, and she found herself opening up to him in a way she hadn't opened up to anyone in years. You got a real knack for this, Emma, he said, after she'd nailed a particularly difficult shot. Natural talent. But talent ain't enough. You gotta have the grit, the determination to keep going when things get tough. I think I have that, she said, smiling slightly. Good, Jed said, because things are about to get tougher. He explained that the regional shooting competition was coming up in a few weeks, held in the nearby town of Redemption. It was a big event, attracting shooters from all over Nevada. You should enter, Jed said. You got a shot at winning. Emma hesitated. The thought of competing against experienced shooters in front of a large crowd was daunting. I don't know, Jed. I'm not sure I'm ready. You're ready, he insisted. You got the skill. You just need the confidence. And I think you'll find plenty of folks in Redemption who are willing to test that confidence. He was right. The Redemption competition was a different beast altogether. The Crimson Quarry was a dusty, sun-baked patch of land frequented by a handful of locals. The Redemption Range was a sprawling, modern facility, buzzing with activity. Shooters of all ages and skill levels milled about, their rifles gleaming in the sun. Emma felt instantly out of place. She was wearing her usual jeans and t-shirt, while many of the other competitors were decked out in expensive shooting gear. Her custom .22 caliber rifle, lovingly maintained by Jed, looked almost quaint compared to the high-tech weapons on display. She spotted Earl Buchanan across the range, smirking at her. He was surrounded by a group of his friends, all of them laughing and pointing in her direction. Emma tried to ignore them, but she could feel their eyes on her, their judgment weighing her down. The competition was fierce. Emma shot well, but she made a few mistakes, nerves getting the better of her. She finished in the middle of the pack, far from the top spot. Earl and his cronies were quick to rub it in. Guess you're not as good as you thought you were, Ratcliffe, Earl sneered. Maybe you should stick to cleaning houses. Emma gritted her teeth, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a response. She packed up her rifle and walked away, her head held high. As she was leaving the range, a woman approached her. She was tall and athletic, with a steely gaze and a confident demeanor. She introduced herself as Sarah Jenkins, the reigning regional champion. You have a good eye, Emma, Sarah said. But you need to work on your technique. And you need to learn to ignore the distractions. Easier said than done, Emma replied, her voice tinged with bitterness. Maybe, Sarah said. But if you want to compete at this level, you have to learn. I'm willing to help you. If you want, Emma looked at her, surprised. Why would the champion want to help her, a nobody from Dust Whisper? Why would you do that? She asked. Sarah smiled slightly. Because I see something in you, Emma, something special. And because I like to see new talent rise. Keeps things interesting. Emma considered the offer. It was a chance to learn from the best, to improve her skills, to prove everyone wrong. But it also meant putting herself out there, exposing herself to more ridicule and judgment. She said, finally, I'm in. Sarah smiled. Good. We start tomorrow. Be ready to work hard. The training with Sarah was grueling. She pushed Emma to her limits, demanding perfection in every shot. She taught her new techniques, helped her refine her stance and grip, and showed her how to control her breathing and focus her mind. But the most important thing Sarah taught Emma was how to ignore the distractions, how to block out the noise and the negativity and focus solely on the target. You can't let them get to you, Emma, Sarah said, during one particularly tough session. They want to see you fail. They want to see you crumble. Don't give them the satisfaction. Prove them wrong. Emma took Sarah's words to heart. She practiced relentlessly, pushing herself harder than she ever had before. She started to see real progress, her accuracy improving dramatically. She also started to develop a bond with Sarah. They were different in many ways, but they shared a passion for shooting, a determination to succeed, and a deep understanding of the challenges women faced in a male-dominated sport. As the weeks passed, Emma felt herself transforming. She was stronger, more confident, and more determined than ever before. She was no longer the girl who was haunted by the past. She was a shooter, a competitor, a force to be reckoned with. The next shooting competition arrived quickly. Emma stepped onto the range, a different woman than the one who had competed in Redemption. She was calm, focused, and ready to show the world what she was capable of. Earl Buchanan was there, of course, along with his usual entourage. He smirked at her, but Emma didn't flinch. She simply ignored him and focused on the target. The competition began, and Emma shot flawlessly. Her bullets hit the bullseye with astonishing accuracy, earning her a score that was far higher than anything she had ever achieved before. The crowd watched in stunned silence, their jaws dropping in disbelief. Earl Buchanan's smirk faded, replaced by a look of confusion and disbelief. Emma continued to shoot, her confidence growing with each shot. She was in the zone, her mind clear, her body relaxed. As the competition drew to a close, it became clear that Emma was going to win. She had outperformed all of her competitors, including Sarah Jenkins, the reigning champion. The crowd erupted in applause as Emma stepped forward to accept her trophy. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. She had done it. She had proven everyone wrong. As she held the trophy aloft, she caught Sarah's eye. Sarah winked at her, a proud smile on her face. Emma knew that she couldn't have done it without Sarah's help. After the ceremony, Earl Buchanan approached Emma, his face red with anger. "You got lucky," he spat. "That's all it was. Just dumb luck." Emma simply smiled at him. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe I'm just better than you think." She turned and walked away, leaving Earl standing there, sputtering with rage. As she drove back to Dust Whisper, Emma felt a sense of peace and accomplishment that she hadn't felt in years. She had overcome her fears, faced her demons, and proven that even from the ashes of tragedy, a new future could be forged. But she knew that her journey was far from over. She still had a long way to go, more competitions to win, more challenges to overcome. But she was ready. She was ready to face whatever came her way.